purpose of Ramadan is also self-love and self-care. We live in a world where we're so busy all the time and we're just like work takes over, gym takes over. And in that 1 month, because you're focusing on your spiritual side and getting close to God, that self-reflection helps you find yourself again. You're still working in that month and you're still doing everything you normally do, but it's like your soul is just taking a break and it's just like, this is me and I forgot who I was in all these 11 months.
I love that one. Yeah. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Diversifying Data. I am your host Rakhi Sharma and today I have a very, very special guest with me. Haleema Iddris is our B2B marketing manager at Kubrick, and Haleema, we're here to discuss Ramadan actually, and I'm really, really excited to dive into it and to hopefully share some amazing stories. This is the month of Ramadan, and then following that period it's Eid that you celebrate. So I was wondering if you could start by telling some of our listeners, what is Ramadan and why do Muslims observe it?
So firstly, from a personal perspective, I feel like it's a month of self-care, self-reflection and self-love in a way. And when I explain a bit more about Ramadan, it will make more sense. But it's the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, and the way the Islamic calendar works is it goes on the moon rather than the calendar months.
Yeah.
So every year it will go back 10 days because every time there's a new moon, the new month starts. So sometimes we'll have really short fasts.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll have really long ones. Now we're in the period of like semi-long ones.
Oh no.
But yeah, so it's split into 3 stages. So there's 29 to 30 days. The first stage is mercy. So in those 10 days, we focus on not just asking God to be merciful to us, but also trying to be merciful ourselves. So being compassionate towards others, focusing on kindness. It's something we should do all year round.
Yeah.
But it's just emphasized in that 10 days. And in those 10 days, when you're connecting with God, you focus on the merciful side. But also you try your best to be compassionate and merciful to others. I mean, if you're asking for something, you want to do that in return for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the second stage is forgiveness. So those 10 days we focus on asking God for forgiveness, but also it's a time of reflection on forgiving others. It's easy to ask for forgiveness, but then if you're stubborn, I'll be honest with you, I was quite stubborn. But now I'm a believer in forgive but don't forget.
Yeah.
So I feel like making sure that someone doesn't hurt you again is in its own place, but at the same time, forgiving is a really big thing. And I know I can't sleep at night if I upset someone. So it's like, just forgive people, because you don't know by forgiving someone, like how much it changes you as a person and makes you a bigger person. And then the last stage is, so those 10 days are seeking refuge from hellfire and just asking God for protection against bad and evil. And again, being kind to others and taking care of others. But also the Muslims believe that in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, on one of the odd nights, the first verse of the Quran was revealed. Throughout those 30 days, you're still focusing on everything, but it's kind of like this extra focus on those specific things.
Right.
And going back to the self-love, self-reflection thing, I feel like it helps you as a person kind of like recharge for the next 11 months on how you are merciful to others, how you are compassionate towards others, how you're kind towards others.
Yeah.
And then you move into the forgiveness, and it's like, okay, when you're kind, it helps you forgive. And so it kind of, it's like a journey through.
Yeah.
But then that's also like a small journey of what is coming for the year.
Yeah.
And just as you start to lose it, then Ramadan comes again.
I think that's brilliant though, because I've never heard it likened to, because you hear about the challenges around it, which we'll get into as well, and you know how you do juggle the reality of life with something that is akin to taking a pause from it, and how you juggle that together. But I love the element of self-love and self-care, because you know in our podcast we really touch on the fact that how do we, cope with even the diversity that we face? This is an element of that where, you have to be accommodating of all sorts of things and try and give yourself that self-love, try and give other people around you the space to work differently. Yeah. And this is an element of that. So, I wanted to ask you, in light of that, I'm going to jump a little bit. I want to get straight into the challenges actually, and then work backwards. So what challenges would you say Muslims face when observing Ramadan? And especially, I'd say maybe touching on the work environment and what maybe we can do to make it more, to facilitate an easier working environment.
Just to go back slightly, because I didn't really mention this, part of Ramadan is obviously fasting from sunrise to sunset.
Yes.
And in that time, you can't eat or drink. And there's a few other things which you can't do. But again, that's not restricted. So if you're menstruating, you can't fast because you need nutrients. If you're pregnant, you can't fast because you need food and drink. If you're ill, you don't have to fast. You can take your medication and look after yourself. But as a way of compensating for that, you have to pay for one person's meal, a poor person's meal per day for each day you don't fast.
Yeah.
And for example, if I'm in the middle of fasting and I vomit, I can't fast. My fast invalidated and I can eat and drink. Same if I lose more than a mouthful of blood. So like if I cut myself, obviously I'm injured.
Yeah.
So your fast invalidated. But the reason why I bring that up is then to obviously go into the challenges. So in terms of challenges, one is what I'm feeling right now is thirst.
Yeah.
Because you can't drink. And the same is hunger. But although you're hungry and thirsty and very tired because the lack of sleep, those challenges kind of become points of reflection and bettering yourself. Yeah. So, for example, one of the big things in Ramadan is, like all year round, we're told not to sin, don't backbite, don't lie, don't cheat. Yeah. But when you're hungry or thirsty or like drained and you feel really angry all of a sudden, that hunger reminds you to stay calm. It's like they're like these points where it's constant reminders to be good.
Yeah.
So every time like you're about to talk bad about someone and you have no energy to even like complain, it's like, oh yeah, I'm hungry, I'm tired. Don't complain, just stay quiet.
Yeah.
So although they're challenges, they're also like barriers to stop you from doing things that you shouldn't be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So it's a really beautiful thing. So although they are challenges, they are kind of positives in a way. But then if we move on to challenges from a work perspective, one thing that's like a known thing in the Muslim community, and any Muslim who's listening will probably relate to this, is not even water. So usually like anyone who's not Muslim, anytime you talk to them about, or they know you're fasting, they'll be like, you can't even have water.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not been a single year where I haven't heard that comment. And I mean, it's nice because obviously they're interested, but I feel like one of the biggest challenges is when you're refraining from things. I personally feel like you shouldn't expect everyone to know about it, because I'll be honest, I don't know much about Judaism or Christianity. So it's completely fair for people not to know. So there's nothing wrong with asking, but I feel like sometimes you'll be in a position where, for example, this has happened to me in previous roles, not in Kubrick. But for example, I'll say, oh no, I can't even have water. And then they'll be like, are you sure I can't just get you a drink? Are you sure? And it's like, if I could have a drink, I would just have a drink.
Yeah.
I'm not choosing not to.
Yeah, you're not choosing to be a martyr for the sake of telling people that. No, that's.
But then I think another challenge is when people don't fast. So I've never experienced this, but I know sometimes in the past, like for example, if you're menstruating, you can't fast. But then you'd feel too awkward to eat or drink at work because you're like, then people might say that, why are you eating or drinking? And then obviously you don't want to tell your personal...
absolutely.
You don't want everyone to know that.
Wow, I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
So sometimes you'll like literally be thirsty all day or starving all day just because you can't be bothered for the question.
The conversation and the questions,
the thing is, it's not that it's a bad question. It's just you don't want people to know when it's your time of the month.
Understood.
So it's kind of awkward. So there's challenges like that. So I feel like one thing that I would say is if you see someone not fasting, it could be their health. They could be unwell and they don't want anyone to know they're unwell.
Yeah.
It could be they're on medication for a certain thing.
Yeah.
Which, like, for example, if you're on antibiotics, you can't fast because you have to take it 3 times a day. So I feel like one of the challenges is people not understanding what fasting means. But it's also a challenge if you're not fasting, because people are like, isn't it Ramadan?
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit like ask questions, but also don't be too intrusive.
Yeah.
Like, just if you see something and you're really interested, like, maybe pull them to a side and ask them. But at the same time, if you see someone eating, don't be like, why are you eating?
Yeah, I still can't believe that people, would question it, because it's also like, some people who, it is completely different, but work in any kind of a different way, and someone highlights that and makes a big deal out of that, or says, that's interesting. Why are you doing that? How are you working like that? I think asking a genuine question, if it comes from being inquisitive, isn't a bad thing. But then sort of passing judgment and saying, "Oh, is it not?" That type of.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's the way you go about it.
Yeah.
And then another challenge is obviously, so in Islam we have 5 daily prayers.
Yes.
But during Ramadan, the night prayer is a lot longer. And then on top of that, people voluntarily, so we believe in, during Ramadan, everything that you're rewarded for is like times 1,000.
Wow, okay.
So where you'd be rewarded for something like for prayer in Ramadan, that just like levels up. So because of that, obviously people voluntarily worship all through the night, and the night is the best time to do worship, because the reason behind that is because that's when people usually sleep and everyone's tired. So the reward is greater, because when you should be asleep, you're choosing not to be and worship instead.
Yeah.
So one of the main challenges is tiredness. But I didn't know by your question if you meant like challenges with fasting or challenges from other people, but I think
you've covered both. No, 100%. I think it's just challenges in general, because it is such an important part of a Muslim's identity.
Yeah.
So that's such an amazing thing that you guys get to have that time of self-reflection. But then I guess when it comes to, and actually I'm glad that you touched on the way that people interact with you and the challenges around that. But again, when you're faced with hunger, tiredness, all of that, maybe this is a bit of a rookie question, but I was going to ask, do you feel like your performance at work is inevitably affected? Do you feel like your concentration wanes? Do you notice a drop in terms of energy? Like, just so that people know, and obviously everyone's going to be different in terms of that, but maybe for you personally, do you notice that work for you changes during Ramadan? How does that happen?
I feel like, I think anyone would lie if they're saying it's not more challenging. But it's really strange, and I feel like Muslims understand, but speaking to a non-Muslim, it's like they would think, how does that even make sense? But it's really strange. In Ramadan, it's like all of a sudden you just become so adapted to that cycle. So if anyone asked me outside of Ramadan to fast and come to work, I'd probably collapse. But it's like, I don't know if it's like this feel of community, or this feel of this is something we have to do, but it's kind of like you adapt. But I definitely do struggle with it in terms of, one is I can't have coffee, so or I already have way less sleep than I usually would, and then on top of that I wake up and I'm like, oh my god, I'm on like 2 hours sleep and I can't have a coffee. So instantly, no energy drinks, no coffee, and obviously throughout your workday, you snack, you get hungry. You can't do any of that. So I definitely think, I don't think it affects performance massively, but I feel like it affects myself. So I still get the work done, but it's like I'm just a bit more tired doing it.
Right.
And I do feel like things like, for example, your lunch break, you don't really eat lunch. So it's like, if I'm working from home, I'll try to take that hour to like catch up on my sleep, or just rest, or just like go away from my laptop and lie down for a bit, so like my brain's rested enough to go back into focus. But yeah, definitely I feel like it is a lot more challenging. But I think, like I said, it's so hard to explain, but during that month you just become strong enough to do it. And so it doesn't, personally anyway, it doesn't massively affect me.
No, I think that's actually really interesting, because I can almost imagine after you've done it a few times, you sort of do go into that autopilot and you're so laser focused on iftar is at a certain time. So actually, if you wouldn't mind touching on the actual observation of Ramadan, where do prayers come in? When does iftar happen? Maybe explain a little bit about what that is, and when you break your fast and when you do the work, and kind of the cadence of events would be great.
Yeah, so I'll kind of do like a day in my life.
Yes, I mean, that would be great. Let's do a day in your life.
The prayers will all be at the same time for everyone. Maybe everyone functions differently.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, because the calendar month moves back 10 days every year, the timings will change. So if you're listening to this in like 2 years from now, I'm sure it'll be completely different.
Wow.
But suhoor is like when the fast closes, so that's around sunrise time. There's 5 daily prayers. The first one is an hour before sunrise. Before that prayer starts, 5 minutes before it starts, you have to finish eating. So usually I wake up around 4:45, eat by 4 o'clock, brush my teeth, relax a bit, and then pray. And this is where the issues start, because generally you have that prayer anyway, but you just wake up, pray, go back to sleep. But because you stay awake for so long and you eat in between, it's just like just so broken up. So then I finish that prayer, and then I have like 2 hours to sleep in between work. So I sleep again, wake up for work, start my work day. At the moment, we only have one prayer which falls in work time. So that's around midday. At the moment, it's around 2 p.m. So then we do that prayer, carry on working, and then come 5:30, I log off my laptop straight away. I try to nap for an hour in between. But also one amazing thing about Ramadan and moving on to iftar is generally every rule in Islam is based around self-discipline and being a good person. And one of the rules in Islam, which personally I don't follow as well as I should, and I'm sure a lot of people don't, is not overeating. And that's solely based on the fact that to stop you from becoming too greedy or trying to live too ostentatiously. And one big thing in Islam is everyone's equal. So a king is no different to its servant, and one race isn't more significant than another race. And this thing in Islam of eating within proportions and not overeating to the point where you feel sick is to stop you from becoming too obnoxious. But the beauty of Ramadan is, because we're stopping ourselves from eating all day, God doesn't put a restriction on food. So some people take that to extreme levels and they're like, I can eat whatever I want. But because you're not questioned on how much you eat or what you eat, you can just basically go crazy. A lot of preparations involved in.
I've seen some of the like, I can only describe it as a feast
every day, literally.
Unbelievable. It's like
some
the
people
feast
are really
of
good.
my dreams. The food there, I was just like, and people prepare it, and it's so much love, and like the family all comes together, which is fantastic. But I was just thinking, every day, if you go for that,
it's long in terms of preparation
as well, right? It adds to that.
It is tiring. But so what I do is I finish work at 5:30, rest for like an hour, and then I start preparing dinner. Obviously I have help from like my husband, but it's still long because he can only make cereal, so he helps. But I feel like he causes more chaos than help.
Maybe they designed it that way though. Like maybe
they intentionally do
it. Like, oh no, the cereal. See, that's all I can do. No, that's a good one though. He's like, I'm really good at making cereal.
So then around, it's closer to 8 o'clock now, so around 10 to 8 we open our fast. Obviously the time changes by a couple of minutes every day, so it's getting longer each day, which is really hard. But so then as soon as we open our fast, 5 minutes after fast opens, the next prayer starts. And then some people eat everything then pray.
In a 5 minute period?
No, they just like pray a little bit later.
Right, okay.
But some people are like, which is me kind of people, just pray so that then we can just peacefully eat. Islamically, you can't not eat and pray if it's going to distract your prayer. So if in your prayer all you're thinking about is food and I'm hungry, then it's better to actually delay your prayer and eat. So then we eat and we eat and we eat. And then after that, it's the final prayer of the day. And that's the one that becomes longer during Ramadan.
How long does it normally?
So, for example, usually it would take me about 15-20 minutes.
Okay.
But in Ramadan, it will take me about 40 minutes. So it's just like some additional prayers.
Yeah.
But some people don't consider them obligatory. So if you miss them, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it's highly recommended that you do. And then it's just literally pray through the night as long as you can until sunrise again.
That's wild. It's nice that it's all laid out and
Yeah.
you kind of don't have to think too much through it. Two things. What steps can your peers, not management exactly, but your peers around you, steps could we take to be more accommodating towards you? Is there anything, when you're talking about naps and things like that, are people for the most part supportive of the different ways that you need to take that rest for yourself?
I think the main thing is just flexibility. One thing is that I would never expect people to go out of their way for me, because this is my faith and something I choose to believe in and I choose to do. So I think it's unfair to make people go out of their way to accommodate you for something that you're doing out of your own personal choice. And that's one thing that generally with my faith, I'm very personal. I don't really like to discuss it a lot because it's just my own journey.
Yeah, of course.
But the reason I came on here today is just to make people understand a bit more about it. But in terms of I wouldn't want people to feel like they have to go out of their way to accommodate me. And I don't feel like that's fair, because it's my choice. And if you're not Muslim, I don't expect you to do the same.
Yeah.
But I think there is steps people can take in terms of flexibility. So one is maybe cutting down meeting time.
That's a good
I
one.
do attend a lot of meetings. But since Ramadan started, I've been trying to make sure that I only take on specific ones, because the more you talk, the thirstier you get.
Yeah.
As an example right now.
Yeah, I was just actually, when you said that, I was thinking, God, she's been talking for about 35 minutes now, so I'm really not helping. But I so appreciate.
No, honestly,
I think
it's fine.
It's really
I'm really
helpful.
happy that I got a chance to do this.
Yeah.
Another one is for example, working hours. So like I said, we don't sleep much at night. So considering we don't eat anything at lunch, maybe start an hour later or finish an hour earlier. Whatever works for everyone. I mean, I feel like everyone is on their own journey, and there's some people want to throw themselves into work so that it's easier for them. But I feel like the main thing is, in terms of how people can be accommodating, is just not pressure them and expect too much. And how we were talking earlier about, you kind of slow down at work during Ramadan, you're tired, you haven't had as much sleep, you don't have coffee.
Yeah.
I don't know about everyone else, but I can't live without coffee.
I know, you're talking to probably the world's biggest coffee addict, so I completely sympathise.
So I feel and then obviously if you have withdrawal symptoms from coffee, your head's going to start hurting. So I feel like it's just, obviously work is work and it's something you have to do, but just not pressurising them to work to tight deadlines or overworking them. And if they do log off an hour early and they haven't taken lunch, just let it be. Things like that. I think, to be fair, I think one good thing about Kubrick is they're very relaxed like that, in terms of there's no micromanaging and things. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that I've noticed at Kubrick that people aren't doing, which is a really positive thing.
Yeah, that is.
But these are just suggestions for anyone listening. I think the main thing is just being flexible and not expecting the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, this may be a similar answer that you're going to give me. So if it's basically repeat of what you just said, that's fine as well. Keep it to minimal words. But what steps do you think, say for example, our consultants, they're at the junior end of their career, you've had experience, obviously you're a marketing manager, so you've climbed the rank. If it's their first job, if it's their first time on client site, they're trying to prove themselves, as we all do when we're first starting out in our career. You don't want to stand out. You want to you want to stand out in terms of your performance, but you also just want to fit in culturally to what everyone's doing. What advice would you have for our consultants going on client site who are observing Ramadan?
I think my main thing is confidence in what you believe in. And I think, personally speaking, how I just mentioned, my faith is so personal to me. I don't even like to discuss it with my family, but not because I can't or because I'm embarrassed of it. It's just, for me, it's such a beautiful thing that I just want to keep to myself.
Yeah.
But But at the same time, one reason why I'm here today is for this exact reason. I feel like the main thing is just to be confident. We live in a society where now, like, you can identify as whatever you want to. If you want to be identify as a person or an alien, like, it's okay. And so you shouldn't feel shy or like scared to say you're Muslim, because I feel like this is the best time to be Muslim in this society, because you can be Muslim without anyone judging you and without anyone questioning you. And I feel like a lot of people have the perceptions they do on Islam, and this is another reason why I came here today, is because no one speaks about it. Like, if the whole purpose of Islam is peace and being a kind person, but because no one talks about it, people see the media and they have their own perceptions. But I feel like from a Kubrick's perspective, Kubrick is so focused on diversity and inclusion that I feel like any of our clients would be diverse anyway, because otherwise they wouldn't be working with us, because we're so diversity first. So I feel like for any consultant going to a client site, the chances are they are already very diverse and very accepting. But the best thing to do if you are shy or like you don't, just have like a one-to-one meeting with your manager and just explain how we're talking now. You might feel nervous or like awkward, but everyone believes in whatever they want to believe in, and no one can take that away from you. So if you don't have that conversation, you'll never know how they feel. So you could be sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is so awkward. Oh my God, they're not going to understand. But one, they might have already had a conversation with someone like this. So they might already know. But also by educating them, you're helping other new starters from going through that awkward phase. And if the worst case scenario, you speak to them and they're not understanding, then you know that it's not the right role for you. So either way, it's beneficial for you.
Absolutely.
You would never want to work somewhere where you're not allowed to be, you're not allowed to follow your own opinions. And if you are working somewhere like that, that's a very toxic environment. So it's good to have that conversation to know to get out.
Absolutely. I think that's really it. We've all, we've been talking about so many different topics in this podcast, being a woman in this industry, being neurodiverse, being LGBTQ, it's all about having the confidence to be different and to vocalize that your differences don't make you weaker at work. What it means is that you have to potentially operate in a slightly different manner to achieve the same results.
100%.
So I really agree with that, and I think that anyone listening, if that's something that you're struggling or maybe don't have the right way of going about it or a bit nervous, I think Haleema's given a brilliant insight into that. So thank you.
All right.
I'd say I really wanted to understand as well. You talked about that sense of community that Muslims have, and that's something that drives you forward. Again, within, Kubrick's strong focus with diversity and inclusion, a lot of that is building that community. So we've got, strong partnership with Women in Data. We've got our own Women in Data community internally at Kubrick. Talk to me a little bit about that sense of community that you feel, and how that grows through that period of Ramadan.
I feel like the sense of community just comes from we all understand what we're going through. Obviously, everyone has their own personal journey, but you're all hungry. You're all tired and you're all thirsty. So, some people may be more religious than others. And one thing that's forbidden in Islam is judging people. But it does happen, unfortunately. But I feel like this is the 1 month where Muslims, because they're trying so hard to be good and not do these bad things, including judging people, it's the 1 month where everyone comes together, because all these people who are in different stages of practice and different stages of religion, it's like in that moment, it's like we're just all one big family. And so if, for example, I shouldn't really say this, but just to give an example, like someone who will judge another Muslim outside of Ramadan and be like, oh, they don't even practice their religion properly or things. In Ramadan, it's more support them and help them get closer to God. So, I mean, it's sad that it's not like that all year round. But there's also a lot of other things. It's not just the judging thing. One thing that I notice every year is in Ramadan, we do a lot more charity work as well, just because, like I said, the rewards are higher. And it's not just charity as in feeding poor children or helping people in like third world countries. A lot of it is within our own community. So for example, like I got a message yesterday on WhatsApp, like a group message, which was there's a single mum who is struggling with the cost of living. So if anyone can help with the iftar meals, please let us know. And every day one family will cook for them. So iftar is such an important part of Ramadan, like I was saying, in terms of we can feast.
Yeah.
So although there's third world countries who are struggling, there's a lot of poverty within the UK, and there's a lot of people who are living on benefits, who can't afford things. I've received messages of like where the dad's too unwell to work and they're just really struggling and things. So it's like everyone comes together to help those people. And I feel like I just want to touch upon one other thing. I don't just feel like the Muslim community unites. I feel like the community as a whole does. From personal experience, I try to involve myself in charity work as much as I can, which is hard when you're working and things. But for example, I've actually moved out of Oxford now, but when I was living in Oxford, every Ramadan we would feed the homeless in Oxford, and that's not feeding Muslims. It's just feeding anyone who needs help. And we were providing jackets and coats because it was cold. And it brings the whole community together. And even in terms of like from personal experience, neighbors, when you're cooking feasts, it's like it's just natural instinct to give a bit to your neighbors, whether they're Muslim or not. And I feel like that kind of brings a sense of overall community and not just Muslim community, because it's like you're getting closer to your neighbors, like they're happy, you're happy, and then you're building bonds. So it's not just the Muslim community. I feel like it's just overall unity. And I feel like because majority of Muslims are self-reflecting and trying to be better, that betterness is then reflected onto others, and it's just like a domino effect
of it. I think if you're, it's always like, I loved what you said before as well about you're paying it forward, you're setting the tone for future people who come, and you're setting an example almost for people. And I think that when you operate out of that element of trying to be better, trying to be more kind, trying to be more inclusive to other people and accepting and forgiving and all of that does have that domino effect. And even in work, I think sometimes it gets, like you said, right, I think the first thing you said was that our whole lives we're so tunnel vision. We've got this, and then we jump to this, and then we've got work, and then we've got gym, and we've got diet, we've got everything. But I think taking that time maybe to pause and reflect on things that are slightly greater actually has a knock-on effect to potentially even making you prioritize the right things, 100%. Take the right meetings instead of just joining everything for the sake of it. Getting tunnel visioned in the right way about work and about other priorities in your life that also hold just as much meaning.
100%.
So that's amazing.
I feel like all these things in Ramadan is like you're trying not to complain as much. You're trying not to judge people. You should be doing this all year round, but it's more focused in Ramadan. But then it's like, for example, you become so much more patient, just not eating, and still, for example, you don't know how hungry I am right now, but I'm not going to snap at you just because I'm hungry. And that builds patience. And all these things that you're fixing in yourself, the best way to explain it is like, if a dog keeps barking at you and you ignore it, it will stop. But if you're both just going at each other, it would just never end. And it's like, rather than trying, this is one thing that I try to live by, is when you're frustrated at how people are, or like this person doesn't do this properly, or this person isn't like this, or why doesn't this person do that? Don't try to change the world, just change yourself. And by changing yourself, you are changing the world. Because it's easy for me to be like, oh, Rakhi is so impatient. But
true.
I just randomly guess that.
You get me.
But if you're impatient and I'm just impatient back, we'll just argue,
Keep
right?
going. Yep.
Whereas if you're impatient and every time you're impatient, I just stay calm and I'm like, maybe we could do things this way. At some point, you're going to be like, actually, that way was easier. So I feel like making changes in yourself is making changes in others.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like that Ramadan is just, I I love Ramadan, but a lot of Muslims just literally count down the days till Ramadan because it's like the changes that you make in yourself, you're trying to make for the year, and it is a domino effect. Like whether you believe it or not. I mean, not you literally. But you are, because the better you are as a person. If someone's a bad person and they're constantly around good company, they'll become good.
So, I really believe that too. Can people who aren't Muslim also observe Ramadan? Because we're talking about, you know, how you're helping other people and all of the work that you're doing, you personally and also the wider Muslim community, to kind of bring a general sense of giving and community back. You know, can they observe Ramadan, or how do they go about doing that?
100%. They can observe Ramadan, but I feel like a lot of non-Muslims already do without knowing, because intermittent fasting.
Yes.
That is basically what we do in Ramadan. But I feel like from a Muslim perspective, we do all these things for ourselves, but also for a reward from God. And I feel like people who don't follow a religion, other religions might understand this concept, but people who don't follow a religion might be like, what is your reward from God? But I feel like the biggest point on that is it's a reward to yourself. I can't explain it. It's just such a beautiful thing to do, and I would recommend it to the whole world, because it's like I was going back to those barriers. When you're hungry, it stops you from doing more bad, because that hunger is a reminder of why you're trying to be good. The thirst is a reminder of why you're trying to be good. When you're tired and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, it's like, no, there's a reason why I'm doing this. And it's self-discipline. I feel like if somebody asked me to stop junk food or diet or eat healthy any other time of the year, I'd be like, I just can't do it. But in Ramadan, it's like, you just do.
Right.
And it's strange, because I would not be able to go a whole day without eating any other day of the year. But I feel like for non-Muslims, I would highly, highly recommend, even not a month, just a week. Even not a week, just a day. But I feel like if you can, try to do it for more than a day, because obviously if you do it for a day, it's just like, I'm just waiting till the end of the day to eat. But if you do it for a couple of days, even if it's 3 days, and you understand it's not just about stopping yourself from eating, there's greater reasons behind it. Talking about all the things I've mentioned, like you're focusing on not complaining and not lying, not cheating, being good to people, being compassionate, giving to charity. If you observe Ramadan how it should be observed, and not just the food part, I feel like even people who don't follow a religion will be amazed, because you're not just getting, for Muslims, you're getting rewards from God, but as a human being, if you take religion out of it, you are rewarding yourself massively, because you're loving yourself more, you're respecting others more, and just overall your morals, everything, you're just bettering yourself as a person.
I love that explanation, actually. I think that's because sometimes that's where the conflict lies, I guess, is you know, if people don't follow a religion, what would be the perceived benefits of doing something like that. But I think that you've explained it perfectly, and I think I wanted to really wrap things up by asking, you know, when does Ramadan end this year, and how do Muslims generally celebrate the end of Ramadan? Because I'm sure that's always a really nice thing to look forward to as well.
I think that's a funny question that you asked, is when Ramadan ends, because like I said, the Islamic calendar depends on the moon.
Yes.
So another thing that Muslims have an issue with is every year booking a day off for Eid, because Christmas is just Christmas, right?
Yes.
But with Eid, it's like, I don't know if it's going to be this day or this day. And then your manager's like, how can you not know which day Eid is? So it's actually a really exciting period. So it's either 29 or 30 days. And the moon isn't sighted until evening time, which is after iftar and after fast opens. So it's really interesting, because there's this like big excitement. So even during Ramadan, like how people decorate their Christmas trees and stuff, a lot of families, including myself, we decorate for Ramadan. So the whole of Ramadan, like I have decorations up in my house. And then Eid comes and it's like, oh my God, like it's finally here, because you've like fasted for a whole month, and self-discipline is hard. Doing that for a whole month, you want your reward.
100%.
So then on the evening of the 29th fast, it's like, is it going to be Eid tomorrow, or are we fasting tomorrow? And it's like this awkward thing, because that long prayer I said is only when you're fasting. So it's like, do we read? Do we not read? And it's like, it's this long thing. And then the moon is sighted, and then usually the people at the mosque will be the ones to find out if it's sighted or not. So then you're like, everyone's trying to ring the mosque, and it's like, is user busy because there's so many people trying to ring, and you're like,
know that.
it's
so
such an exciting.
You have to get the confirmation from
the mosque.
Oh, wow,
and the funny
okay.
thing is, usually the mosque, as soon as they know, they announce it anyway.
Right, okay.
But everyone's so impatient. The moment they open their fast, they're like ringing the mosque.
That's wow.
And then so then when it is Eid the next day,
yes.
It's just like, the best way to describe it is Christmas, but it's our equivalent to Christmas.
Yes, yeah.
But it's like the best day ever. It's like the feasts in Ramadan on steroids.
Really? That's amazing. And I'm guessing big family parties and all of that.
A lot of togetherness. Yeah. And that Muslim community that we were mentioning earlier is also very, very strong on Eid.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of families, there's a lot of reverts who don't have family or friends close. Some people live abroad, things like that. So I have never ever experienced Eid where there's not a big gathering. So I mean, we're a very big family, so we celebrate together. But for people who don't have that family feel, there's so many events where they can just go, and like there's just stalls and like gifts. And some things about Eid is, if you can afford it, you're recommended to wear new clothes. We dress up a lot, like a lot.
I've seen some of the outfits that you wear. It's like you're going to, like,
a wedding.
It's like a wedding, honestly. I remember seeing, I think it was on the street. Actually, I think it was just, they must have been going to an Eid party.
Yeah.
But it's literally like a party.
Literally.
Because you completely
Huge
doll
party.
up. You all look gorgeous.
It's so exciting. Another thing that's highly recommended is gifting.
Yeah.
So now it's boring for me because I'm an adult, so I give more gifts than I receive.
Then you receive. As a kid, I'm guessing it must literally, it's like a kid on Christmas versus...
And it's like the one day where my dad would actually let us ask. Because there's another thing which we call Eid, which is basically money.
Yeah.
So we used to go around asking everyone for Eid. And like, my dad was very strict and like, anything you need, ask me. Don't ask everyone else.
Ask everyone, yeah.
And on that one day, it's like, you know when your aunties and uncles give you money and it's like, no, you can't take it.
Oh, Indians do the same thing. Yeah, you have to do the fake thing of where you're pushing away, but as a child, you really want to take it. Yeah, we've been through the whole thing.
But literally, that's the one day where you can go crazy and ask everyone.
Oh, great.
So
that's brilliant.
Kids go all out.
Yeah.
And then it's just like people celebrate in different ways. Some people go out or like have a day out, like for example, to, I don't know, like a theme park, a restaurant. Some people just stay home. The past few years, because obviously it's been in summer, we've been doing a lot of barbecues, and we intend to do a barbecue this year, but it also depends on the weather.
I know. Some days you get yesterday you have torrential rain. Yeah. Today it's like sunny. Hopefully it's a day like today. Let's just please.
But we play games and we just like celebrate. It's really hard though, because on Eid you want to eat all day.
Yes.
Because you're not restricted. But because you're so used to restricting yourself, you can't eat enough.
Yeah.
You can't eat as much as you normally do.
Does it take a while to revert back to being able to have 100%. Breakfast, lunch and dinner after that? It does.
Definitely.
Okay.
Because on Eid day, I'm literally having like a feast just for breakfast. Like,
right.
I'll be drinking Coke at breakfast.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
But it's
Some
so
people
hard.
do that normally here, though.
I did go through a phase of that.
Did you actually?
But then I went back to coffee.
Yeah. See, because people are always like, "Oh, you drink so much coffee. You must, Coke is not that different. So much caffeine." But it's just the thought of having a fizzy drink in the morning. But I get that if you've been deprived of that.
Yeah, but it's just literally a day of celebrations
and
just chilling and enjoying time together.
Yeah.
We do have an actual Eid prayer, so really early in the morning. There's 2 or 3 different times where you can go mosque in case you miss one.
Yeah.
And there's Eid prayer, and then there's like a sermon, so like the imam will just talk about a specific topic. Usually it's like reflecting on Ramadan and like kind of like a talk on just because Ramadan's left, don't change your ways kind of thing. And that's when usually like everyone, so because you celebrate in your families, that mosque is the time where you can like meet your friends and like just mingle with everyone before you go off into your little groups. So yeah, it's just a day to chill and enjoy, really.
Amazing. Well, I think unless you want to add anything else,
I think that's it from me.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much. I think so many of our Muslim consultants and everyone else listening is going to really take so much value and be like, someone gets it. They get it. Like they're vocalizing to the world exactly what we're going through. And there's so many beautiful elements of Islam and also Ramadan that you guys attain and get towards the during the process and at the end of it as well. So thank you for coming on and sharing. Any final thoughts from you?
A lot of people think Ramadan is just about stopping yourself from eating and drinking. And obviously that does remind us of like the poorer people and people who don't have it. But focus on self-love. Don't think of it as a chore or think of it as this is something we have to do. Think of it as a time for yourself. You will get so much more out of it, because I don't think, I have to pray you pray 5 times a day anyway, but I don't think I have to pray all through the night. I think, sometimes when your life's so busy or your day's so busy and you just want like 5 minutes to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so noisy and your head is just clouded. It's like, use Ramadan to, when those times you're praying and those times you're hungry, use that as a time to just find yourself again.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah.
My final point is use Ramadan to find yourself and to just take yourself out of the world and deep who you actually are and what you believe in, and just try to better yourself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I think that's something that we can all take on board, Ramadan aside and, going forward in the year. But it's a really lovely thing that you guys have the time to focus on that specifically during this month, and I think everyone can hopefully take some of those lessons on board and some helpful tips about how to approach colleagues in the workplace and also how to deal with those conversations internally and externally. So thank you, Haleema, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much
and thank you everyone for listening to Diversifying Data.
Thank you.
Yeah.